see some familiar faces once again. Unfortunately, it's the last halaqa, but inshallah, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us to benefit. So, again, I'll just go over a short hadith of the Prophet and then some discussion related to that, and you're welcome to ask questions after that, socialize. That's what it's about, inshallah ta'ala. So, this is the final halaqa of this year, and hadith that I might have covered for some before, but I wanted to leave something on a positive note. And so, that's why, because it's about the food, right, and everybody enjoys eating, right, so I thought I would do two things, right, mention about the goodness of eating, and also mention my name alongside with it, since it's in there, right. So the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet says, "At-ta'imu shakir ka-s-sa'imi as-sawij." Right, that the one who eats and is thankful is like the one who fasts and is patient. Right, so it's an interesting hadith. Generally when we talk about religion, when we talk about faith, when we talk about deen, right, then it's a lot of times it seems like it's stringent, very strict, very rigid, very difficult. But the reality is that it's just a set of values, right? And a set of values that a person adopts, accepts for themselves. That's what a religion really is. There's no such thing as no religion, right? When a person claims they don't have a religion, they really have a religion besides what everybody else follows, or the main religions that maybe are commonly known as religions. Right? Really, a religion is just a set of values that a person adopts, that a person accepts, a person follows. Right? So that's what a religion is. Right? So in this hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he's again giving us some sort of some positive advice. Right? Generally, like I said, when we talk about religion, sometimes it seems like the only thing that we figure out about religion is that we're going to hell. Right? And that's really not supposed to be the case. Right? It's supposed to be positive. Right? I was at the World Religions class yesterday. I had to give a presentation, and some of us might know the 6 major beliefs of the Muslim, right? And amongst the beliefs of a Muslim is predestination, right? That God already knows what's going to happen, right? So the professor himself asked me the question that if God already knows, then why would you do what you have to do? And I said, well, this aspect, this belief, this article of faith, it's actually supposed to be looked at in a positive sense. Yes, people might look at it negatively, and that's why even the companions asked the Prophet the question that if God already knows, why do I have to do what I have to do? And the Prophet said, well, that's not you're never going to become God. You don't become God. You can't figure that out. You're not going to know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? You're not going to know what's going to happen in the next moment, really, right? Something that's impossible. The idea is that when something happens that is not in your favor, that is something that you might not look at. It was very interesting because I was talking about that. And I have a little mouse here, the Bluetooth mouse, and it slipped and fell from the desk, right? And it broke. Right? Well, it just split open. The cover came off and the battery came out, and so I said, well, something like this, right? I thought it was actually broken. So I told what, this is not something that I would have wanted to happen, right? But it happened, and by taking this article of faith, right, then it becomes easier to accept things that don't happen in your favor. That's the idea behind it. That if God is really merciful and God is really gracious and really kind, then there's some compassion, there's some mercy even in something that seems very negative, right? Something that seems very difficult. And that's the idea. Islam is a positive religion. It wants its followers to think positively, not negatively, right? And like I said, a lot of times when we talk about religion, when we think about faith, when we talk about doing things, because there's disciplines, right? And those disciplines sometimes are challenging, and a person feels like, well, that's too difficult, too hard, right? So I decided to choose a hadith which is, I guess, it's just in order in the collection of the hadith that I was covering. That seems a little bit more easier on us, right? In this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ compares between two peoples, or likens one group of people with another group. The first portion of the hadith, the Prophet says, the one who is thankful, the one who eats, right? At-ta'im, right? The eater, right? The one who likes to eat, right? And I'm sure a lot of us like to eat, right? And is thankful, right? It's like the one who fasts and is patient, right? Now, when we know about fasting, right? And I'm sure All of us, when we fast in Ramadan, we have a clue about fasting, right? When we talk about fasting, a lot of, even yesterday when I was at the World Religions class, this question, does everybody in the world, all the Muslims have to fast the same amount of time, or is it based on region, right? Wherever you are in your time zone, right? And I said, well, it's wherever you are. So, in Canada, because we're going to be fasting while it's summer, right? Then fasts are going to be 18 hours long, right? And well, if you were somewhere in South Africa, right, you might be fasting only 12, 13 hours, right? Because it's winter over there, right? So the question, well, you fast 18 hours? Yeah, we fast 18 hours, right? And it's patience, right? It requires patience. Remember, I don't know if you guys remember, a couple of years ago they had this stick figure, the stick figure things were going out, right? Compilation videos of these stick figure guys. And so there was one stick figure guy. He's he's sitting in front of a big, huge table of food, right? And he's looking at the clock, waiting for it, and he's sweating away, right? Waiting for iftar to start, right? For the sun to set, and he's looking out the window, and you see the sunset, and he starts gobbling everything up, right? And he continues gobbling everything up until he blows up, right? And that's the end of him, right? So that's fasting requires patience, right? But fasting is not something that's specific just to Islam and Muslims. It's actually across the board, right? It's not just related to religions. You can find, medical, procedures that require a person to fast, right? Sometimes they require a person to fast for 24 hours, right? You have to be away from food. You find diets, right? That dying. Well, that's. But you find diets where people have to fast, right? At certain times, right? So fasting is something that's common, and most major religions have some form of fasting, right? Every major religion has some form of fasting, staying away. And the idea behind fasting was to control the carnal desires, right? To control the consciousness, to control thought, right? To be disciplined, right? That's the idea behind fasting. So it's also very healthy for the body, but it's also supposed to be to take control of yourself, to be able to control yourself. But it requires patience, right? When a person's fasting, then it's not just fasting of the stomach, and it's not just fasting of the mouth. It's not like, just because you don't eat that you're fasting. Fasting is a bit more than that, right? The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that a person who fasts but speaks ill, right? Then they haven't really fasted, right? A person who fasts and backbites, speaks ill of people, right? Doesn't control their tongue, right? Doesn't control their sight, doesn't control their hearing, right? Scholars say there's 6 things that a person has to control, and it requires some effort, right? It's an effort to actually be able to fast in that way, right? It's an effort enough just to stay away from food, right? So it requires patience, right? We all know that fasting requires patience. It doesn't come as simply as, hey, I'm just going to fast and I'll be fine, right? You have to stay away from food. Not only that, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said when a person's fasting, there'll be, there's a saying in English, a hungry man is an angry man, right? A hungry person is an angry person. People will tempt you, and you get angry very quickly, right? In one masjid in England, I actually saw a fist fight, right? 2 guys got into a fist fight just over a spot, a prayer spot. Like they came to pray, and one person decided to stand in the prayer spot, and the other guy was planning to stand there, and they got into a fist fight, right? Over a prayer spot. Like, are you praying, or like you're supposed to be praying, you're supposed to be calm, right? But so sometimes the emotion gets the better of the intelligence, right? So that's what happens, right? People get tempted very easily, get angry very easily, and the Prophet ﷺ spoke about that, right? That فَإِنْ سَابَّهُ أَحَدْ أَوْ قَاتَلَ. If a person tries to engage you in confrontation, right, or swears at you, speaks ill to you, right, then فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي صَائِمٌ. Then the person should say, oh Allah, I'm fasting. And the scholars actually say, well, these are, this statement it can have one of 2 interpretations. Either the person is actually saying it to the person that's confronting them or swearing at them or speaking ill to them, saying, look, man, I'm fasting. I don't want to get involved in this, right? Or else if the person is intelligent enough, you're actually telling the person, look, I'm fasting. I don't want to get involved in these things. But if the person is not intelligent enough, then you're actually telling yourself that, look, I'm fasting. I shouldn't be engaging in this thing, right? So, but that's the challenge. This is part of all of that patience, right? Being patient while fasting is something that we've probably experienced, right? We've probably experienced it. So we know what it's like to be patient while fasting. And if a person is truly patient, right? And patience in Islam really means to adopt the right thing, to do the right thing. right? That's why patience has been considered as the solution to all problems, right? The solution to all problems is actually patience, especially when calamities happen. You know, if a person has a loss, has some sort of difficulty that they go through, right? I posted up a couple of days ago on Facebook, just 2 days ago probably, that imagine if they had parent-teacher interviews for college students, right? And you walk in with your dad into your college class, and your professor says, so how's my son? The professor says, I've never seen him, right? College, right? So, I had another funny picture of a guy, trying to save his grades. He says, this is me trying to save my grades, and there's a big fire, and he's taking a small bucket and he's throwing the water onto the fire. Right? This is me trying to save my grades this semester, right? So, that could be, where you have to endure patience, right? And you have to read Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, right? Everybody knows Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un when people die, right? Verily to Allah we belong and to Him we return. But when you see your grades, then you'll probably pray that as well. But that's a different story. That's when I get the question, Shaykh, do you know a dua that I can pass the exams with? Yeah, it's called hard work. So, yeah, that's fine. I'll give you some du'as. If you want du'as, you can ask me. I'll give it to you, inshallah. I have some du'as that I probably used in my time. So, but yeah, now that we see a flood of emails, right, and a flood of messages. Oh, Sheikh, what's that du'a that you were talking about? Why didn't you just post? Last time we got. Why don't you just post this up on Facebook so that everybody can benefit from it? Yes, no worry. I will, inshallah. I actually put it up usually. I actually put up some study tips and some du'as. So patience, right? It's really about doing the right thing, and that's a challenge. Right? It's always challenging to be patient, right? To be able to control one's emotions and thoughts and behavior. But that all comes part of patience, right? And a fasting person, really because they're tempted by so many things, that's why the patience with them is a great deal. Now, if a person is fasting voluntarily, right? Fasting voluntarily, then it's even more so because they're doing it optionally, right? The Prophet used to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. It was his habit, right? To fast on Mondays and Thursdays. He would fast the three days when the moon was full, right? The 13th, 14th, and 15th of every month. He used to have a habit of fasting, but they were voluntary, right? So if a person fasts voluntarily, then they require a bit more to be more patient because people really don't know that they're fasting. In Ramadan, you might expect other Muslims to be fasting, but outside of Ramadan, if you're fasting, you really don't want to give away that you're fasting, right? You just want to fast and get the rewards for it. Right, so it requires a bit more patience. So the idea that a fasting person has to be patient is something that we're kind of familiar with, right? We're aware of. And so the Prophet says, well, you know what? This person who's enduring all of this, there's great rewards for them. Right? It's not like all this is going to waste. Every moment of that person's day that they're fasting is a hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that when a person's fasting voluntarily or even obligatory, right? As-sawmu li wa ana ajzi bihi, right? Fasting is for me, and there is no known reward for it in this world, meaning its rewards are so great that you can only get that reward in the hereafter. Allah is going to give that reward for fasting in the hereafter. Right? So that's the greatness of the reward because of the greatness of the action, right? The difficulty of the action, the challenge of the action. But here the Prophet's saying, well, you could get that same reward by doing what you're not supposed to do during fasting, which is eating. Right? Fasting is supposed to be staying away from food, but here a person's eating and they're still getting the same reward. Why? Because the objective of fasting is recognition of the blessings of God. Right? To be able to recognize the blessings of God, to be able to recognize, to be conscious about the blessings of God. That's what it's supposed to develop. Right? That's why in Ramadan, you might hear the verse, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Fasting has been prescribed upon you, as it was prescribed upon nations before you, so you can become God conscious. So if you're actually doing that, then for a person who's not able to fast, voluntarily, right? And obligations are different. You have to fast the obligatory fast, but nafil, optional fast, you're not doing that. But the person is very grateful to God, right, for the blessings that they have. Right? Then that person in the sight of God is equal to the person who is fasting and is patient. Right? So we eat all the time, right? We eat every day, right? And it's just that, the idea that, this food is a great blessing from God, right? This sustenance is a great blessing from God, and I just have to be grateful. I just have to be thankful. I don't have to stop eating. I can eat, right? I can eat, but I should just be grateful. I should just recognize this as a great blessing of God. That's what shakir means, right? Grateful, right? One who is grateful. So the person who eats and is grateful, is thankful, in the eyes of Allah, this person is equal to the person who is fasting and is patient. Right? But that gratitude is what it is, right? Recognizing that gratitude entirely, right? Just like that fasting person would have to be patient, this person while they're eating, right? And while they're, there's etiquettes of eating, right? And those etiquettes of eating are something that you could try to follow, right? Starting with the name of Allah, Bismillah, right? And then eating with the right hand, and eating from what's in front of you, and completing your food, and then thanking Allah at the end. Alhamdulillah, alladhi at'amana wa saqana wa ja'alana min al-muslimin. Right? These specific du'as. So eat a lot, right? Don't overeat, right? But eat, right? And eat and be happy about it, right? And but be grateful. And that's all that matters, right? If you're grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's an internal issue, right? You don't have to, if you can't fast so much, fasting is obviously a very great deed and a big deal, and a person shouldn't stop from fasting, but a person can eat and still get the same rewards. Imagine that. How great is that, right? You're going to eat every day, right? But you just take that moment to be grateful to your Lord for the food that He's given, and that's equivalent to, in the sight of Allah, to the person who is fasting and is patient. So that's a little hadith, right? So being grateful is not just an act of saying Alhamdulillah. That's part of it, right? I won't take it out. I won't say that it's not, by saying it's not just that, but it is a part of it. Being grateful is an attitude. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking. You're constantly grateful. In the Quran, Allah talks about some people that He tested very severely. And He says in there that, they were put through a very difficult challenge, right? There was an era before, in a different prophet's time, they went through a very difficult challenge. And then Allah tells them, after mentioning and speaking about their challenges and their difficulties, Allah says, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكُمْ لَإِنْ شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ وَلَإِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. Right? That your Lord announced that if you are grateful, then I shall increase you in my favors. If you are grateful, I shall increase you in my favors. Right? And if you're ungrateful, وَلَئِنْ كَفَرْتُمْ, right? If you're ungrateful, the word kafir literally means one who is ungrateful, meaning uses the blessings of God without attributing them to God, without recognizing that they come from God. That's what the meaning of kufr means, right? And so that's why Allah over here uses it even for believers, right? That there could be believers who are kafirs, right? Believers who are ungrateful, right? They don't show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Over here it was talking about those people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was referring to, but He says, وَلَئِن كَفَرْتُمْ. And if you are ungrateful, right? If you do kufr of what? Kufr of the ni'mat, kufr of the blessings of God, right? Then إِنَّ عَذَابِي لَشَدِيدٌ. Don't think that just because you assume that these blessings are in your control, in your possession, that they're going to remain like that. I could take them away, right? And if they're taken away, then nobody can do anything about it, right? So that's why it's important to be grateful. Right? The gratitude that a person should want. And again, like it's pointed out, right? It's more than just saying Alhamdulillah, but Alhamdulillah is part of it. Being able to say Alhamdulillah, all praises belong to God, all good things belong to God, is part of it, but it's more than that, right? It's an attitude, it's a lifestyle. We should want to be grateful, right? We should want to be positive, right? And that's what gratitude does. It develops this positive attitude, right? So, have you said Alhamdulillah today? In the Quran, Allah says, and if you should count the favors of Allah, you could not enumerate them. There was one of my teachers, he mentioned he went to see a patient in the hospital, and the person was sitting up in bed because of, for whatever reason, whatever procedure was done, and he said, today I realized that even a pillow is a blessing, right? Today I realized that even a pillow is a blessing. When you have to just stay seated up, and he couldn't lie down, then he said, well, you know what, you want to really put your head on a pillow, and you want to rest, but you can't because of the circumstance that he was in. And so you realize that this is even a blessing. So many times we come across blessings that we don't really recognize to be blessings. But they're actually a part of us. And that's why the Quran states, if you try to count the favors of Allah, you would not be able to enumerate them. Right? Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahmatullahi alayhi said that Iman is of two halves. Half is patient and half is being thankful. Whereas two major emotions that a person goes through. Right? And Ibrahim alayhi salam mentions them in a verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah quotes him in the Quran, الَّذِي هُوَ يُضْحِكُنِي وَيَبْكِينِ. Right? I recognize God by the fact that He's the one who makes me laugh and He's the one who makes me cry. There's some days when you want to smile and be happy, but you just can't. Right? You just can't. right? Like the day you get your grades, right? That's the day that you really can't be happy, right? Or maybe you can, right? So you see them and you start crying, right? I came across and say, laminate your study notes so that when you start crying, they roll off, the tears roll off the paper, right? When you lose your notes as well, right? So it's about there are moments in our life, and everybody goes through them, right? Times when a person will be, tried and tested. Difficulties will come upon them, right? And they'll have to be patient. And there's moments when a person has to be, joyous moments, happy moments, very, very happy moments, right? When, that a person goes through. And so that's why really life is split up into these two emotions, right? Happiness and sadness, right? Patience and gratitude. Right? One of the bitterest ironies of life is that one only appreciates a blessing only after having been deprived of it. Right? God not deprive us of any of our blessings, right? We don't really realize the reality of those blessings, right? I've had friends, I mentioned before, I've had a friend of mine, he's still alive, who lost his eyesight. He was able to see and then he lost his eyesight, right? It's a very difficult challenge, right? Because when a person can see and then loses it, it's something that's very, very challenging. And that's not what he went through. So it's a reality of life, right? That people generally aren't able to recognize the truth of a blessing until they actually lose it. But if we could recognize that beforehand, or just be happy to be grateful, right? Just be just be content with trying to be grateful, right? Then it's something that hopefully a person will not, when they, even if they were to suffer any loss, they would remain positive. There's always more to thank for than to complain about. Right? That's a reality of life. Right? There's always more to thank for than to complain about. Right? And if we could only see that for ourselves, right? I'm sure, when we wake up in the morning sometimes and we look around and we think, well, what is this? Or you realize you still have 3 years to study left and you have so much to do, and how am I going to get through this, and when's life going to move on, and what's going to happen, and all these thoughts that come into the brain, right? And that's the time to remember that, wait a minute, I still have a lot of things that I should be happy about, right? So that's why gratitude is an attitude. Be patient with the problems you have and be thankful for the problems you don't have, right? So again, it's all about the idea of being thankful, right? Because we have food and it's something that we take for granted, right? Food we take for granted very easily, right? Something that's very easily available for us, especially, right? But we take it for granted, right? And if it's something something so simple as food, if we could really look at it and recognize the reality behind it, that it's something to be grateful about, then, like as the hadith pointed out, we get rewards equivalent to that person who fasts and is patient. Okay, so that's the end of the slide. Basically, this is a little slide that says "At-Takharruj Mubarak." So as I said, I was going to do this in honor of those that are graduating, right, or that have graduated, if they want to call it that way. It's "Takharruj" is the word for graduation in Arabic, and Mubarak, blessed graduation to those who are leaving or graduating. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of their hard work and efforts and make it easy for them in the years coming. There's a little dua that came up, Ya Hadir al-Sighar al-Sumud, Ya Salik al-Ilm al-Durub, Burikat ala al-Juhd al-Du'ub, wa alfa mabrukin ala al-Najah. That the one who attended lectures patiently, and the one who traversed the sciences, the paths of sciences, may your efforts be rewarded, blessed, right? With all your hard efforts be blessed, and 1,000 congratulations upon your success. Right? So that's a little bit from myself for you guys. Congratulations, graduates! New beginning, new chapter, new endeavors, new challenges. May God's graces be with you as you step ahead towards your dreams. Keep the courage as you face new challenges in life. Right? So. I'm sure it's a challenge, after living in a place for so many years and being around so many people. I'm sure moving away to Port Perry is not easy, and and having to worry about being away from friends and family, right? But that's challenges in life, right? I remember when I graduated, it was a challenge, right? You felt like, wow, I started looking at the world a little differently. Started realizing that, oh man, I got to actually go into the world. Right? So. This is the life, right? It's in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you always move from one stage to the next. Right? Every person moves from one stage to the next. You go through different eras, phases of life. That's the reality. Right? The scholars actually talk about one verse which talks about the different phases of life. Right? You start off, in your infancy, and you move through the different phases of your life, and you look back at the previous phase, your previous era, and it looks very silly, very simple in comparison to the era that you're in, right? But you always have to figure out what's going to come ahead. This is the reality of life, right? I'm sure all of you one day, if you're not graduating this year, you're going to be graduating sometime in the future. Hopefully you can wait for that day, inshallah ta'ala, and may that day be a blessed day for all of you. So again, for those that are graduating, and even those that aren't here, from amongst those that are graduating, we pass on the message. These du'as are for them, just as much as those that are actually present. And graduation isn't the end of a tough journey, it's the beginning of a beautiful one, right? So, keep that in mind, inshallah ta'ala, right? That's what you're going on, inshallah. So just one advice to, I guess, more to the graduates than everybody else. Everybody's the same in that regard. The Prophet said, take care of 5 before 5. Youth before old age, health before sickness, wealth before poverty, free time before preoccupation, and life before death. Right? Something that you might want to think about for yourself. I thought maybe these are some beautiful advices that maybe be parting advice for those that are graduating, inshallah. The Prophet said in a hadith, how amazing is the affair of the believer. There's good for him in everything, and that is for none but the believer. If good times comes his way, he expresses gratitude to Allah, and that is good for him. And if hardship comes his way, he endures it patiently, and that is better for him. Another hadith to keep in mind, inshallah ta'ala, as you go. It's all for all of us, right? This is the final halaqa, inshallah. So hopefully, if you're here next year and we can meet again, then I'd be happy, inshallah. But in the meantime, right, this is a very interesting hadith to keep in mind, right? That every circumstance, like I said, is either going to be a positive one or seemingly negative, but you can make it positive. And that's what this hadith tries to encourage us. That be positive in all of your circumstances. Recognize that it doesn't matter how difficult a circumstance may be, there's good in there if you try to be patient. Allah has not thanked the one, He has not thanked Allah who has not thanked the people. A lot of people have favors upon us, and we have a responsibility for thanking them. And amongst them, the MSA. Right? So I, for myself, would like to thank all the members of the MSA and many individuals. I wanted to actually enumerate the graduates, but I wasn't able to get the list together. And then there's a couple here, and I don't want to miss people by not mentioning their names. But there's a lot of names that I would really, really want to mention for myself, inshallah. As the hadith states at the top there, whoever has a favor done for him and says Jazakallah khairan has done his utmost to thank him. Jazakallah khairan, may Allah reward you well. Right? That's what it means. Right? May Allah reward you well. So I would like to say that for myself, to all of yourselves, alhamdulillah, I'm sure some time or another throughout the year we had a chance to meet, and definitely to the MSA, to the brothers and sisters who put this halaqa together, who helped put the halaqa together, and who always were there, mashallah, throughout the year. To our student association, I know I have Siraj to come here, but he's not here, and I would really like to mention his name in particular. There's a lot of names that I would like to mention, but mashallah, he was one who facilitated a lot for us this year. We got the halal food started at EP Taylor's. We also got the Muslim chaplaincy program running, right? And the Islamophobia conference that mashallah many of you participated and helped in. So that was definitely very instrumental. Something that probably will stay after he has gone. I know he's not graduating, but nevertheless. Besides him, there's a lot of members of the MSA that I know are leaving, and from my heart I'd like to thank all of them, inshallah. I thank all of you, right, for coming whenever you came, and alhamdulillah, it's always nice to know and see you yourselves, your amazing personalities and your beautiful faces, mashallah. And I pray that inshallah your summer and your exams go well, first of all, right? I can't forget that. Right? Maybe I don't have exams, but you do. So I pray that your exams go well, that you succeed in your exams, inshallah ta'ala, that your summers go well. Those of you that are moving on to wherever you're moving on to, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you success in life moving forward. And those of you that are coming back, I pray that we're able to meet again, inshallah ta'ala, in September. So, Jazakallah khairan again to all the brothers and sisters of the MSA and all of yourselves, inshallah ta'ala.